Arrival by John Charters. Read by Colin Baker.
The world-shaking news was carried simultaneously by every wire service. Within hours, there were few human beings who had not heard it on television or radio, or seen the giant headlines in every language. "Message from outer space!" screamed the New York Mirror. "Aliens contact Earth," informed France's Paris Soir. "Is it a hoax?" asked the Times cautiously. Each editor vied to set up the biggest, heaviest headline of all time. The stock exchange in every country wavered, rising and falling as panic selling was replaced by shrewd buying. The first contact had been made around 3 in the morning at Mount Benview Observatory in California, where two sleepy but enthusiastic junior astronomers were completing an infrared study of a distant galaxy, using a high-powered VHF instrument to measure the bounce back. It had suddenly developed an intermittent clicking, which had sounded like Morse, but made no sense to the technician who remembered enough from his early training. The same sounds had been picked up by various radio hams around the world, but mainly ignored as being undecipherable or in a foreign language. The frequency seemed to alter, as if the transmitter was seeking a contact. At Mount Benview they had noted the disturbance in their logbook, only because it was unusual for their instrument to pick up transmission on such a high frequency. The next morning it was played back on the tapes, and a senior technician cautiously suggested that it was not possible for it to have come from Earth, or even one of the satellites. He talked mysteriously about warping, but no one took him very seriously. At 4:25 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time the next day, a hoarse voice was picked up in various parts of the world on a short wavelength. It might have been taken for a hoax, except for the remarkable fact that every person who heard it, be he English, Russian or Chinese, heard it in his own language. A rapid checking between the countries showed that the voice had spoken at the same moment everywhere. The text, as recorded in most countries in each language, said, "Now feel we on correct sound band for your star is that planet, Earth. Language translator not perfect, yet some mistakes. We are from galaxy, star system, very long, far from you. Have picked up your transmissions for many, cannot yet understand your time bands. We feeding in computed information and complex machine improving translation now. We come in peace. Request your pleasure. Correct to permission to land and exchange information. If not granted permission, will continue on our journey. Now have understood your time band. Will you transmit answer in 24-hour units from now, using your shortwave coordinates? Computer complex indicates our name to you is KPOC." The voice was gravelly and slow, with pauses after every few words as if the next phrase was being studied before being read. Assuming the whole thing was not a gigantic hoax, which did not seem practical in view of the broadcast by the identical voice in every language, it appeared that the world had 24 hours to make up its mind if it wanted to play host to an alien race. The hotlines burned between the leaders of the world. Every nation, large or small, was entitled to have its say, and the United Nations delegates in New York prepared for an all-night sitting. The usual cranks caused the usual minor panics, which always occur during world crises. Pundits were summoned to chat shows on television. Experts appeared in news programs and interviews, all giving their studied, serious views for and against. But inevitably, the answer must be yes, land. It was unthinkable that such an opportunity could be ignored. Nevertheless, the governments of the world were cautious. Suspicion, ever present to politicians, lurked in every cautious phrase. Are we so naive that because these things from outer space claim to be friendly, we must believe them? Bellowed a red-faced senator in a television interview, aware that since there were no wars going on, his shares in a camouflage clothing factory had nosedived recently. We must sound the alarm, a call to arms. Be prepared to face this ghastly invasion with the courage and fortitude which our soldiers have always shown in time of war and strife. By noon of the following day, the Secretary of the United Nations Organization announced that no decision would be taken yet. Before permission was given, a further exchange of greetings might be helpful. It was pointed out that the strangers, friendly though they might be, could be carrying germs which, while harmless to them, could be fatal to humans. It was considered a splendid piece of political indecision. After minor squabbles and attempts at one-upmanship, it was agreed to send the answer on 2 different wavelengths, one in English and one in Russian, from Washington and Moscow. At 4 p.m., the vast IBC station broadcast. This is the planet Earth calling our visitors the K-Pox. We speak in friendship, but with wisdom. Before a landing is agreed, we would wish to know more about you, just as you should learn more about our ways of life, our beliefs, our science, our society. If you have monitored our sound waves and can understand our languages, we would request an exchange of information before contact is made. We stress again, we speak in friendship. Can you indicate what distance you are from us and consequently when you expect to be near us? The world waited breathlessly for an answer. Was it all a hoax or a bluff? Were they really friendly? The fate of the human race might depend on the next message. 24 hours later, the answer came, again seemingly in all languages, although this was now explained. The voice had improved its quality and had almost a chatty resonance. This is the K-Pox spaceship calling Earth. We have received your friendly message and meanwhile have adjusted our computers to converse with you so that your basic tongue will hear our signals and understand them. This process we will show you, and Earth people will be able to communicate without a language problem. We agree to exchange information, although it seems our telemetric vision is far more advanced and your receivers will be unable to pick up the picture. This can be rectified upon our arrival when we will give you this formula. Difficult for us to judge distances, as we have no means yet of comparison of lengths. Our ship is about 200 times the length of one of us. From our monitoring and computer calculations, it seems we have similar bodies in many ways. We walk upright, on 2 appendages as do you, and have 2 arms, although you appear to have only 1 elbow. Also, we do not have what you term a thumb. This was not for climbing trees in your past. We are, of course, telepathic, which we imagine you will soon become. Your civilization seems on the brink of a major breakthrough, a wonderful era for you. We expect to arrive at your planet in about 6 of your weeks, as far as we can judge your timescale. By the time we receive your reply, we will have stepped up transmission so that we can answer immediately. The K-Pox send you greetings. To the average person, this easier and casual exchange was hugely reassuring, and the promise of new formulas and advanced inventions excited the experts. The delegates at the United Nations were more relaxed, and the threat of an invasion from outer space now seemed pure science fiction. At top level, the news was reassuring. It seemed that their spaceship was about 1,200 feet long. Big, yes, but no more than an ocean liner. Within a few hours, IBC and Moscow drafted their reply. World leaders encouraged by your sensible answers to our requests. We anticipate, after further exchanges of information, we will be in full agreement to give permission to land. We suggest each day that time is given to our scientists, politicians, society leaders, ministers, doctors, and other prominent citizens to broadcast our views and request similar information in exchange. Immediately the world heard this message, there was pandemonium. The leaders of the nations, now all comfortably installed in New York with their retinues, realized they had made a mistake. Firstly, the more serious followers in most countries considered the broadcast was smug and pompous. It was felt that any race which had the advanced technology to travel from star to star, staggering distances which could only be measured by light years, and whose computers could translate and emit information in every given language, should not be treated like an inferior, poor relative, being given permission to land. They should be made welcome now, and we should be humble in our approach to them, realizing they could alter our whole existence, said the experts. But the big mistake was in the last part of the message. From all over the world, telegrams and telephone calls poured into the United Nations. It seemed that every preacher and politician, every man of letters, every television interviewer wanted the chance to ask questions to the aliens, and unselfishly would be willing to come to New York, naturally with all expenses paid, to assist the human race in understanding the K-Pox. The visitors, however, seemed unaware of any presumptuousness or pomposity on the part of the human race. Their replies grew more cordial as their computers were able to translate and relay every nuance of the spoken word, and soon it became obvious that many transmitters were being used throughout the world. As the days passed into weeks, a mass of information was relayed by the K-Pox. Their home planet seemed to exist in a galaxy in the outer reaches of space, which not even the electronic eyes of Mount Palomar could pinpoint. Their life cycle appeared to be about 150 years. They did not have hair, and it turned out they had a third eye in the back of their cranium, as they did not have a neck. Doctors and anthropologists were astounded that despite these differences, the similarities in the two species were numerous. Even though the K-Pox had two hearts, the blood pressure seemed to be the same, although always the computers were uncertain about size, except in proportion to a standard. In due course, the leaders of the world issued a friendly request to the K-Pox to visit the Earth, which was received with cordiality by the visitors. The K-Pox people have heard with joy your kind decision to welcome us to your planet. Within a few of your days, we should be within your star system, and already our course plotters have singled out your sun. We shall commence a gradual braking as our present speed in your terms seems to be many millions of miles per second. We would respectfully ask your theoreticians to provide us with coordinates which will allow us to land carefully without damage to your surface. Meanwhile, in answer to your previous questions on relative mass on our planet, after many consultations and a certain amount of good-natured bickering, it was surprising, however, how friendly and more cooperative the leaders of the world had become, it was agreed that the Penhurst racetrack would be the ideal site for the landing. Only a few miles outside the limits of New York City, it had flat, deserted country surrounding it, and would give an uninterrupted view to the hundreds of thousands of people who could be expected to watch the landing. The top engineers and scientists had been concerned that the method of propulsion of the spaceship might cause damage or pollution as it descended to land. the Kapocks put their minds at rest, although the learned men were no wiser. "Not yet possible to translate into your tongue the method of propulsion, as correct words do not exist. The nearest explanation our computers can emit is what you call magnetic. If you conceive two magnets, one being attracted to the other, the second being repelled, so that it is being pushed away faster and faster, but drawing the first one with it. There is no limit to the speed, and it must always increase. As for gravity, we use the same method top and bottom, adjusting the magnetic flow to compensate thrust and mass. It is very simple, and involves no fuel or implosions." This simple explanation caused considerable interest throughout the business world of oil, airlines, and every industry remotely connected with combustion or rocket propulsion. It could mean the end of an era, the approach to cheap travel, the termination of pollution from fumes. It could also mean expansion to the stars. The world waited breathlessly for the Kapocks' arrival. The density of entry into the Earth's atmosphere was carefully broadcast to the spaceship, although with their magnetic propulsion they could slow to a stop and then descend gently through the ionosphere. Latitudes and longitudes were explained, the Kapocks politely refusing the offer of radar and a homing beam, saying their scanners would bring them down exactly onto the target area. The Kapocks had requested a 12-hour break from midnight in order that the computers and themselves could concentrate on coordinates, and as they said, half humorously, to look their best upon their reception to Earth. They had explained that normally they only wore clothes as a protective covering, but out of deference to their hosts they were hastily fitting themselves out in what appeared to be skirts. A few minutes before midnight, the voice broadcast, "People of Earth, it is with solemn assurance and joy we report that we are now at a standstill above your beautiful planet. Although smaller than we expected, it is brilliantly coloured compared to our own. In fact, we have adjusted our—" and here followed a word that sounded like jinn— "to compensate for the brilliance. As arranged, we will descend for a landing at your coordinates exactly 12 Earth hours from now. It seems possible that your atmosphere may produce a static which will cut off communication for some time. Do not be alarmed. We will pick you up again before landing. Now we bid you our happiness, for on your tomorrow will be the first meeting of two great civilizations." The great day dawned. Instead of clear blue skies, there was a heavy mist and low clouds over most of New York State. A thin rain drizzled down on the vast involution of humanity, who, undismayed by the inclement weather, poured into the huge parking areas around the wide racecourse. Already, hot dog stands and portable kitchens were doing a sell-out trade, queues by the hundreds springing up for food, drink, periscopes, latrines, even an enterprising news sheet which purported to give inside information direct from the White House. Hundreds of thousands of transistor radios were switched on and at the ready, although stations had warned that there would be no further contact until only a few minutes before the spaceship landed. It had been agreed finally that the welcoming speech would be delivered by the Mayor of New York on behalf of the city and the world. If the President himself made it, protocol demanded that almost every representative of each country would claim a similar privilege. At 15 minutes to noon, with nearly every delegate miraculously in position, the gold and white helicopter of the President descended majestically on the racecourse in front of the beflagged grandstand. Mayor McMichael held his hat firmly on his head until the big rotors slowed. Formally, He shook hands with the president, and they strode up to the welcoming platform, the great man smiling and waving to the delegates. Seated on the platform in rows were the leaders, the ambassadors, prime ministers, and statesmen of all nations. Never had there been such a high-level meeting, thought the mayor ruefully. Microphones and television cameras were everywhere. It was the widest covered event of all time. It stopped raining, and workmen pulled back the awning over the platform in order that the dignitaries would have a better view of the descending spaceship. Everywhere one could see tense young men in well-cut suits. The FBI and CIA were out in force, searching, scanning, looking for any nut in the crowd who might decide today was bomb day. At a few minutes to 12, the speakers in front of the president crackled into life. On the special wavelength which had been agreed on, the Capox began transmitting. This is the Capox spaceship, welcoming the people of Earth on this momentous day when our two civilizations will extend arms to each other in perpetual friendship across space. We have begun our descent and already can see your beautiful lands below us. We are eager to explore the wide expanses of blue rock, which covers so much of... At this point, the static drowned the transmission. Mayor McMichael remembered the tense 12 seconds when the astronauts returned from the moon and radio transmission blacked out. Going to plan. Falling slowly and can feel your gravity. Similar. Estimate about 60,000 of your feet. There seems a grey smoke below us. Our scanners go through it. It cannot be mass. Perhaps a protective covering of some sort? The director of touchdown control spoke into the tiny microphone clamped to his earphones. Break radio silence. Tell them it's only clouds. They'll clear through them at 15,000. In a moment, control interrupted the voice on the spaceship. Earth to Capox. You're coming through a layer of clouds extending approximately 12,000 feet, but visibility under them is satisfactory. We should be sighting you at any moment. Our radar contact has picked you up. You're dead on course as you are. Thank you, Earth. We are descending now through a thick substance which our computers are... There was another crackle and the voice broke off. A great shout went up from hundreds of thousands of people staring upwards. Slowly emerging from the thick grey clouds came the spaceship. Like a gigantic silver airship, it sank majestically downwards, silently and smoothly. Its outline shimmered, giving a curious pulsating look, as if it was not solid. Inevitably, it started to rain, although no one cared or took notice. Every eye was on that gigantic silver shape as it sank onto the mile-wide green turf which had been cleared and marked. Suddenly, the speakers crackled into life. The voice came through, now hoarse and panic-stricken. What is happening? What are you doing to us? We are disintegrating. It was a trick. You are destroying us. We came in peace. Too late. Everything dying. To a stunned, unbelieving audience, watched by countless millions throughout the world on television, the mighty spaceship was melting. Like a gas bag with a leak, its beautiful symmetry sagging. Within minutes, the horrified crowd saw only a huge grey puddle spread over hundreds of yards, the rain relentlessly pouring down on it. On the world of the Capox, atoms and molecules had never known water. To them, the simple rain had been 1,000 times more deadly than sulfuric acid.